All right. Welcome to the Sustainability Interest Group at Cal EPA. Thank you all for coming. And we have a very special guest today, Heidi Sanborn. Heidi, so glad to have you join our group. Really is a pleasure. Heidi, you and I go way back. I met you almost, oops, yeah, muted myself. Met you almost close to 16 years ago when I was the Sharps and Pharmaceutical Specialist, hired at CalRecycle. And you were already hitting the ground running long before that, working. I've always thought of you as the EPR person, the extended producer
Yep.
responsibility person. But looking at your kind of resume, you're definitely doing a lot of other product safety kind of things. How would you describe what you do?
Well, thanks again for having me, and it's really good to see all of you and be here. So, I mean, what I do now is I really focus on what I feel are the biggest issues that affect public health and the environment in the waste management space. But I also, in the evening, I'm in my middle to end of my second term as a SMUD board member, which has been highly educational around. There's a lot of overlap that I did not realize about, we're talking about battery recycling and windmill blades and solar panel recycling and electronics, and a lot of that's going for energy production. So there's a lot of overlap, and also being elected, I think I have a different view of how the process works for policymaking. And it's been, I mean, I love my 8 years at CalRecycle and I learned a lot, but I've learned a lot being out as well.
Mhm.
Um, and I would advise all of you, um, don't let those golden handcuffs lock you up too tight, because there's a big world out there. And having been a consultant and then in government and then being an advocate and now being an elected official, I think that's a good thing because it helps me see more of a 360 view of the world. So I'm really good at, I think, bringing people together and crafting solutions. But if
Mhm.
anybody's watched me in action, you'll all know that I can also bite pretty hard and start shaking if I have to get people's attention sometimes. But it's always for the greater good.
And we could go through the list that I've already shared in our meeting invite of all the kinds of legislation that you've sponsored or helped to get come into being. Truth in labeling, for instance, sales bans of fluorescent tubes and gas cylinders and things like that, prohibiting local laws or regulations that prohibit drought-tolerant landscaping. We do a lot of discussion about that kind of thing in this group. Uh, but let's go all the way back. Like you said, you spent 8 years at CalRecycle or the Integrated Waste Management Board. Started as a tech senior.
I actually
How?
started as a regular associate. So this is actually, I'll share with you one of my complaints, the way government civil service is set up.
Yeah.
I had already been a consultant for several years, and I had started as an intern when I was at UC Davis, an environmental policy and planning major. And when I came in, I already had the experience of being with the local governments trying to comply with the goal of 25% by 1995.
Mhm.
And I realized, how are we expecting them to do all this at the back end when they don't control anything about what's coming at them? They don't even know what's coming at them. It just shows up, and then they're somehow supposed to figure it all out, educate the public, find a place to put. I mean, it was ridiculous. And I
Mhm.
thought, we got to go upstream. This isn't working, and it's not cost effective. So I started getting into this whole, figuring that something was very wrong. And I also saw a whole bunch of money coming to consultants to write solid waste management plans. They were basically cutting and pasting and just changing the name of the city and charging $80,000. And I thought, I don't want to be part of this. This is not helping anything. It's just pushing paper around. And then I decided to go in and work at CalRecycle. And my experience would have brought me in at a higher level, but they brought me in really low because they said, well, you don't have state experience, which had absolutely not. I mean, I thought I had more experience than the people that were already there. So then I
Right.
come in, and then, I was quickly promoted, um, and so forth. But I do think there's a problem when everybody coming in is coming straight out of college, and that's all they know for years and decades. They've never been regulated. They've never had to meet a payroll. They've never had to comply with these rules or these timelines. And I'm just as an awareness for all of you, there's a benefit to you, to the state, to uh, sometimes have different experiences and come back to state government, you
Right.
know, because I think that's a problem. We don't make it easy for people to do that. And I think we should, because I think it's healthy. But anyway, so I ended up from getting tech senior, and I was noticed by 3 board members of 6 at the time when we still had a board, and they all asked me to be their policy advisor, and I picked the chair, of course, and it was the first all-female chair and staff at the top for at the time, the Waste Management Board. And then I saw the politics, and that's when I started getting really interested in that. So after 2 years of getting, zero waste as a goal and EPR and product stewardship as a means to get there into our strategic plan, I decided I'd done all the big thing I could do there. And then I moved on and I left the state and went back to consulting and also got my master's degree in public administration from USC because I thought I have to understand the politics better. And I met a lot of people at USC, and that was great. And I started consulting to the Product Stewardship Institute on their National Paint Dialogue. And then I realized I didn't like how they operated either. And NGOs can be just as much about money as anybody else can. And they get into fiefdom fighting and all that kind of stuff. So I was very disappointed to see some of the backbiting and stabbing that I saw amongst industry. I was seeing amongst my fellow NGOs, and I was like, oh no, not again. And then,
So
yeah, I started.
before you go, let's back up, since I know not everybody knows the NGO or the EP. We've been throwing out terms EPR. Can
Yeah.
you define EPR first of all? Let's talk about, a lot of what you've been doing is extended producer responsibility. What does that mean to the average staffer who may not be in that world?
Sorry, I forget this is broader than just the waste board. Or CalRecycle stuff. So extended producer responsibility is where you extend the responsibility for the product beyond just selling it to proper labeling, developing markets, ensuring responsible end markets, and what happens to that at end of life. So you actually, as a company, can't just sell it and wash your hands of it and say, I got all the profit, everybody else is left with all the problems. You have to be responsible for all the problems. And what that does is it creates a financial feedback mechanism to the company to say, now this is a line item on your ticket on to when you have to answer to your quarterly shareholders about your cost of end of life management. And if those costs are high, they're going to try and beat you up to get those costs down. They don't do that when they're off the books and on local government's backs, which means taxpayers and ratepayers. And what that means is that we've socialized costs and privatized profit. That is not okay. And that's where I say that's not a free market. That is not what I learned in school in economics is how it's supposed to work. It's supposed to be the transparency of the product price should share with the buyer the life cycle costs. That's the fastest, easiest, most elegant way to get the feedback mechanism to the producer to reduce those end of life costs. And an economist, a conservative economist, actually believe that.
And in a way, it's like going back to the way it was like for bottles and for packaging. The Cokes were sold in reusable bottles, and milk was sold in the reusable glass jugs that were carted around. Back when our parents were little kids or that kind of
Now
thing.
that I'm 62, I can tell you that's true. We
Yeah.
got our milk delivered in Delaware. We had in glass bottles. We had, a chip of tin that would come. We had, our eggs delivered in that same milk thing. So we had Cokes that were in wood crates that we would bring back to the gas station, and they were all reusable glass bottles. We've gotten away from all that. And one of my biggest complaints about the bottle bill, which was one of the first bills in California on these issues, one is that the state runs the whole program, and that's a whole different problem. But for inefficiency, and I can explain that it's not about you guys per se, it's just about how government works and how slow it moves in response to market changes. But it also just really undermined the reuse section because it just made it all about recycling, and we got away from source reduction, which is why AB 939 was passed in 1989, saying we had to go to source reduction first, then recycling and composting, and then disposal. The problem is we never put metrics on source reduction on anything until basically SB 54, the packaging law.
And that leads me to, and I meant to mention this up front, that this is just part one of a two-part series. You are coming back to talk about SB 54, the packaging EPR program.
Happy
So
to.
let's hold that whole discussion
Yep.
for that meeting. But this we could talk about all kinds of EPR programs that you've been working on with paint and mattress and carpet and
Mercury thermostats.
record
DTSC has
thermostats
that
and
one.
yeah, yeah. And all the programs that have not even been unfolded yet, even, the packaging EPR, but also batteries and textiles and things that we're not seeing the results on ground truthing yet. And I want to kind of, because this group is all about being sustainable in our own lives, I want to do a little ground truthing and, for instance, now or later, just what happens if you Google, I don't know, carpet disposal in my zip code? How prevalent is it? And that's where it all boils down to. It's, are the people on this call even aware that you should be taking your carpet to a location? So that's the education part of the program, EPR programs, and carpet and paint. And do we all know that paint is also hazardous waste in California, and you shouldn't be throwing it in your trash unless it's really, solid and all that. So there's the education, and then there's the locations of how many places, how convenient is it for us to actually return things. Let's see.
I'm going to put in the chat the
Yeah.
link to our website because we just did Senator Blakespear, who's chair of Senate Environmental Quality Committee, just hosted Tuesday last week a EPR hearing, and I was the closer on 3 panels. And Zoe was there from CalRecycle, DTC directors Katie was there as well to kick it off, and there were 2 other panels. I was on there with Mark DeBee at the end, but if you want to watch it and want to watch what I said, I think I brought up some pretty important points that a lot of people would want to hear and understand. One is that I think as a political science person, somebody who really believes in how government works and its importance in our society, I don't believe it's the role of government to do the thing. I believe it's the role of government to do 4 key things. One is ensure transparency and accountability of the process being done, whether the government runs it or the private sector runs it. I've seen things hidden when government runs it too. So, because I've been at the top there and I've seen that too. So we can't say it's just government, it's transparent. 2, that the government sets the performance requirements in a producer-run program, not the entity being regulated. That's the fox watching the chicken coop. 3, that they enforce in a timely manner, because you have an unfair playing field. If you have one company that's complying, another company that isn't, and they're both allowed to sell in the state, that's not fair. And we have to make sure that doesn't happen. And in some countries like Germany, they've had as high as 24% free rider problem, and that does not work for business. And then lastly, what was the 4th thing? I'm just thinking. There was only 4 roles of government. I'll think about it in a minute. I'm having a brain meltdown here for a minute, but those are like, the government shouldn't be doing it. They watch, they set the performance standards, they ensure transparency and accountability, force, and fair and level playing field. That's it. That's how really good, efficient programs run. And then you let the private sector do their thing. They can internalize costs. They can raise their costs to the consumer anytime they want for any reason, or drop it if the markets all of a sudden start driving themselves, or if they start taking their carpet back and they start, lowering their material costs. We can't do that at the state. Or if you have a visible fee, the retailers get very upset if you say, oh, It's going up, it's going down, it's going up, it's going down. Because guess who's first on the front line to answer the question of an angry public person?
Right.
There are people who are paid minimum wage and they're getting yelled at. So,
Right.
yeah.
So yeah, the EPR in general has kind of gone through some growing pains of kind of learning those lessons to take it off the receipt, taking the line item off the receipt, and a few things like that over the years.
Yep.
So what is, can you explain if industry is running the program, how does that take shape?
What the first thing they do is they're required by California law and the checklist that CalRecycle has put out for legislation. It has to follow a certain format, which makes sense, and it has to have certain things. One of them is that they're a 501c3 nonprofit. And the reason is there's like 19 different kinds of nonprofits under IRS rules. If they are an association of 501c6, they could determine it's best for the association if they not expand collection, because that would cost them more. So you don't want them to have that designation. You want them to have the 501c3, which is what we call has the halo effect. It's the most transparent and it's required to be for public benefit. So we require them to form a 501c3 for public benefit tax exempt corporation that then sets up the whole system. They hire the person at the top. They start hiring what we call the people in the black box room. What's a black box room? Well, when you have horizontal competitors working on a program together, under the law, they cannot be forced to share information with their fellow competitors. That could be a rate setting or, tricking the public on the rates. Yeah. So you
Right.
have to have a black box room where there's internal people that do that. The companies report to them, this is how much I sold. These are the volumes. And they get an invoice, but they don't get to see what others are, their sales data, for example.
So there's the controversy, I guess, or the discussion over, does EPR increase costs? I think industry is always going to be concerned about that my widget, my product is now going to get more expensive and now I'm not competitive. I think there are studies that are saying that no, overall it's more and a more efficient program. I think maybe you're more familiar with that.
Oh, this is a great argument. So they say, oh, yeah, it's going to raise product prices. And in fact, you probably remember, Burke, in the San Francisco Chronicle, they said it was going to raise the price of drugs $5 a prescription. We said, prove it. Well, guess what? When they sued Alameda County, who passed the first ordinance on drug take back, all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, they stipulated to the fact. That means that they could prove it, that it was less than a penny a prescription. So what does that tell me? They will say anything in the media. Nobody holds them accountable for that lying. But when it comes down to a court of law, they have to tell the truth. And the truth was, it was not $5 a prescription. Now, I said in the media also, well, if Johnson & Johnson CEO is making $24 million a year, and that's our estimated California program costs, you put all these drug companies together and their CEO pay alone, they wouldn't even notice it if they paid it just out of CEO pay. The bottom line is everything costs money. If you're going to do a program, it costs money to set up. The question I ask myself is, where is it best paid and how do we get the cost down system-wide the most? Who is most efficiently going to run the program? Is it the people who make the product, who determine what's in it? Is it recyclable? Is it durable? Is it repairable? Or is it everybody at the back end that doesn't even know what's in it? Or it has any ability to change design or marketing? It's clearly the producers. So if they design and market something, then they have the ability to change what it's made of. Can it be disassembled easily or not? And for example, Hewlett Packard, when they started taking their computers back to recycle them, very early days, about 20 years ago, they quickly realized that one of the biggest costs they had to recycle computers that can't have a battery, because if you crush it with the battery, they explode, was that they had designed the computers, so you had 3 different types of screws and screwdrivers to remove the battery to get it out in order to recycle the electronic. So what did they do? They quickly redesigned it to have a pop-out battery.
Yep.
That simple design change made literally reduce their cost by a third at the back end. So that's what I mean about internalization of costs. When they pay, they care about end of life. When they don't pay, they're happy to say, oh, it's so costly. What the price of products are going up. Well, guess what? Guess what price of garbage is going up? Has anybody seen the stats on our garbage rates? They're going through the roof. So if we don't get these costs down, I want to see the cost be down and have the right appropriate entities in charge. And that's why I believe in EPR.
And that's two things. That's getting to, Jeanette had a comment that you want to take things back to repair appliances. That's another area. But it's not just the tipping fees at your local landfill, but I guess that all comes down to the cost that you pay to take stuff to the dump. But that incorporates the cost of expanding the dump throughout California, the limited resources or space that we
Who here
have.
wants to live near a dump?
Right.
Who here wants to live near a burn plant?
Right.
We can't even cite them. We can barely cite a recycling facility. It's taking on average 10 to 12 years to cite a composting facility.
Right.
If we can't even do that, then so my rule is turn the spigot off first, then start mopping. And what we've been doing is we've been crazy mad moppers. That's super inefficient and it's dumb, quite frankly. And so we need to get back up and turn off that spigot. The only way we can turn off the spigot is work with the producers and get them to redesign and think long term and pay for those end of life costs. When I went into a Hoover store, I'd literally bought a Hoover vacuum, I think it was about 15 years ago now. And I went back to the store because it broke in like a year and asked them to repair it. And he goes, oh, you don't want to do that. You could just buy this new one for this. And I said, sir, I just bought this last year. I bought it at your store so I could come back here to repair it. He said, oh, nobody does that anymore. They're all plastic. Because they don't have to pay.
Yeah. I just bought a washer and dryer over the weekend and trying to negotiate with the retailer to take the old washer and dryer back. And I just rented a truck and picked it up because I needed it now. And so now I have this washer and dryer in my living room. But the city won't take it till April, so, right to repair, I've been repairing it for years. The heating element keeps going bad and the wheels on the drum, blah, blah, it's just, it's time it just finally broke down and I gave up. So yeah, right to repair is one thing, but take back, at least we have a junk take back in California, at least in Sacramento, you can
that's up
put
to
stuff on your curb. Yeah.
They call it bulky item pickup.
Yeah. But at least, carpet and paint and what else? Some of these other mattresses, those have programs.
Let's do a little survey. How many of you, just raise your hands on the chat or in the reaction, how many of you were aware that we had a carpet recycling program in California?
And it's been around for more than a decade.
14 years.
Okay. No.
Okay. So one of the complaints, and you can watch it in the EPR hearing, was that people in Stanislaus County who were trying to shut down that incinerator didn't want to feed it. So they were trying to find, they learned from the state that there was a carpet recycling program and diverted the carpet to that, but they didn't know even, because why? Because carpet industry hadn't promoted it.
Yeah.
And we're not doing a good job. And I talked about what to do about that when I was at the hearing. If you wanted to watch it, I was at the pretty much the end. How many people here know about the paint program? You can bring paint back to some paint stores. Raise your hand.
Raise your virtual hand.
I see one thumb.
Let's see.
Not many, but a couple.
Reaction.
Okay, so a couple of you, more than certainly carpet, because the paint industry's done a better job of promoting the program, but we need to still have more. If the people at Cali, PA do not know that this program has been in place since 2012, we're talking 13 years in place, the bill was passed in 2010, then we've got a problem.
Right.
And that's what I talked about in the hearing. I can say that what I want to see in the new bills is that everybody has, all producer-run programs have to have every year do a statistically valid survey of Californians to determine who knows about their program and who doesn't, what demographics and all that, and then figure out how to reach those who haven't been reached. And the ones who have been reached, are they using the program? And if not, why not? So that can be a program improvement feedback loop. They do that in Canada and they don't do it here. So I want that in all the future bills. And
I
somebody asked,
just,
oh, go ahead.
I just thought it was so, I don't know, eye-opening when China stopped taking back our waste, and we realized how much of our waste wasn't really recyclable, but just being shipped off because
Well,
we were
when I
like
was, that's a great
tons
point,
of
Sharon.
money.
I would say the average person was surprised, but like, for example, I was in the chair's office in 2000 and I could see this shift happening. And I told the chair at the time, I said, Linda, if we don't do something about this, the day's going to come when they're going to pull down and say, we're not taking this anymore. Because what they did was very smart. They used us. We paid them to take our trash. And what did that do? That paid them to build their infrastructure for processing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said, oh, we don't need your trash anymore. Now we can take ours. And then they started processing their own trash, totally cut us off. What was that a reminder of? That we like international trade, but is it smart for us to rely on other countries for our infrastructure that's critical infrastructure?
Well, we don't even take our own batteries. Even our battery reclamation facilities in California have been driven out because they don't meet our air quality standards.
I could go on and on about that one. So
Oh,
we
yeah,
are
me too.
And so I will say this state, more than any other, is known for having the most rigid rules on protecting the environment and public health on hazardous stuff. But we're not being realistic in the big picture. So what is it doing?
And
It's
we
all
need to
being
keep them
shipped
so we don't
to places that don't care.
that don't do anything.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
me
oh,
too.
thank you, Charity. I wish you could stay longer, but yes, that's a problem. We have to look at the whole, and that's why I say it's good to have a 360 view, because if we are very myopic in how we view the world and say, well, the very best thing for the environment is if we do this and that level of science and so forth, that may be true. But if we do that, is that going to result in a truck with diesel driving all the way to Missouri to drop off a marine flare? Yes. Yes, it is. We have no place to dispose of marine flares in this state. And their ammunitions are all going to Missouri.
Or sending our clothes to another country and just having them burned instead of recycling them here.
And what do? We just passed the textile EPR bill. And as I said at the hearing, what do we have in textiles now? We are allowing glitter stuff, which is microplastics. We are allowing lead and other metal things to be glued to your jeans. We are allowing vapes to be built into the strings of hoodies. They're going to, oh yeah, look it up. It's right there. They've got them all over the internet because the kids are trying to hide their vaping products from the teachers. They have them in highlighters. They have them in watches.
But they don't even have a good vape recycling program.
Okay, so you're getting, so we're all on the same page.
Period.
I've said this repeatedly, until we have a screening process, I will not be happy, because at this point, what I'd like to see is us go all the way to the front end and say, not only are we going to make you retroactively, or like after you've put something on the market for 8 years and it's a problem, then we're going to say, oh, you have 4 years and there's regs and there's a dub. So we're basically getting screwed for 15 years before anything really happens. Let's get to the place where we say, if you're hazardous or you're a problematic or you've got a horrible hybrid, meaning you put an electronic in a balloon or electronic in a piece of clothing, you have to do a checklist and a filing. And if DTSC or any of the agencies at CaliPA say you cannot sell this because of this and that issue, you cannot sell it. You've got to cross some threshold, because right now, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the latest, but they have these new vaping products. These are party canisters. So compressed gas cylinders are causing major danger to our workers on the in the garbage trucks. And the latest problem, this is a new thing. You're going to die when you see these. They're these big canisters. They call them Miami Vice. And they are party. They've got like skinny girls in bikinis on them and all this. It's nothing but nitrous oxide. And they're being left all over hotel rooms for parties, at high school parties. The kids are vaping. They buy them online. Amazon gets away with this all the day. And then very few of them end up at a hazardous waste facility. I can assure you, those party people are not just going out of their way to drive them over there. But some of them are. They're costing us $70 a piece to manage them. And if they get thrown in a truck, I have a video that I put in our last newsletter, which, by the way, you're all state agency people. I would love it if you donated and became members, but if you just want to get on our listserv so you can keep up with what we're doing, we're happy to add you. So if you put your email me at heidi@nsaction.us, I will just add you, because I just put in our newsletter information. We just had 2 giant tractor trailers burned to the ground in Sunnyvale that probably had a battery in. But I also put in the same newsletter a video of these poor guys in Ohio that were just loading a trash truck from a rear loader. They hit the button to compress it, and somebody had put in an oxygen tank, and it blew the whole back off that truck. Garbage all over those poor people. Fire started in the truck, and they did everything right. But the problem is we're selling things to the average person that they don't understand, and they have no clue what their end of life plan is because they're not told. And then we wonder, oh, how did this get so dangerous? By the way, we just became the 4th most deadly industry in this nation, being a garbage person. That should not be. And we are not going to be able to hire people if this continues. So I just put in the newsletter as well, and I just worked with the Solid Waste Association of North America to come up with a statement inviting the producers of products with batteries or explosive problems to come to the industry and start working with us now. We are out of time to solve this with legislation state by state. It is not enough. We're literally I predict we're 2 years away from being uninsurable, up and down. Our trucks are blowing up. Our landfills like Chiquita Canyon are on fire and closing. Our recycling facilities are blowing up. The MRF and South Bay Waste Management Authority blew up with a battery fire. They traced it to, took 8.5 months to get it up and running. They had 1 insurer going into the fire. They had to patch together 7 to reopen. We are very close to requiring local governments to be municipally self-insured. Who has the money for that? What happens when every MRF in the state and municipal hauler can't get insurance? Everybody needs to start thinking about this, because we're not that far off.
Right.
Because if I'm an insurer company right now, I'd be going, this is not looking good. I just talked to somebody this morning. They just had a landfill fire in Florida, and they think it was a battery. So, I mean, again, screening products, do they have removable lithium-ion batteries? Do the public know that they're removable or even in there? Where do they bring them? How do they keep them safe? Think about schools. They're being left with vapes in the lockers. They've got lithium-ion batteries. Those kids are hiding them in the bathroom, and then they don't want to bring them. They don't want to admit they have them, so they flush them down the toilet. So now it's clogging the sanitation system. It's got all those chemicals in it. I mean, we're just not thinking. We're not thinking life cycle, and it's doing a lot of damage.
So let me share my screen real quick and just do a little ground truthing on where we are. Let me see. Where are we with screen number 3 here and share. So what happens if you do a Google search on mercury thermostats in my zip code, and okay, TRC, Thermostat Recycling Corporation, pulls up a search, few searches down, and that gives you recycling locations, and that gives you can pull up maps for each of these, something within 1.4 miles of downtown Sacramento,
I've
for,
used those and they don't always take whatever you put in.
okay.
Well,
And they said,
thermostats are different. Thermostats, they should be fine. Because there's not,
Thermostats, but you know, like if you call and see, do they really take paint? Do they really take this? Do they really take
right.
that? And a lot of them don't.
well, okay, so what do you do when that happens? Because you can help us be eyes and ears on the ground.
I
If,
talked to my friend who lives in Elk Grove, and he takes it to the hazardous waste recycling facility in Elk Grove because I live a mile outside Elk Grove. I don't want to pay the extra $10 to drop the thing off.
so next time, email me because these
All right.
industries are terrified of me. And when I call them and say I have a specific example of a problem, they will fix it. No, because I will use it in testimony and be very public about it when they come back and say, oh no, our program works great. Which, by the way, Burke, I was at a private meeting about sharps and meds, and you should hear the sharps industry. They think everything is fantastic. Nothing is wrong. Well, 5 out of 6 pharmacies don't even know about their program and aren't giving away the free containers, which was required in the law.
I was wondering about that. So
Yes.
if you're a diabetic, which I think is the biggest population of self-injectors, uh, you go get your insulin at your
The
local
biggest legal
pharmacy.
population.
Right, right. Well, actually, I think they are
Yeah,
like still.
maybe. Okay,
I think it's like
I'll take your word for it.
13% illegal and 80%, I don't know. Anyway, a lot of diabetics. And so if you go get your insulin at the pharmacy, they are supposed to give you a container along with
Yes.
yeah. And when I go online, go back to where I was there, it's so hard to get that kind of information. Like, okay,
Yeah. Oh, their lobbyist sat there and actually said, no, everything's working great, blah, 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 blah. And I said, so you think it's great that I just went to a pharmacy literally a mile from here, and they told me that they were just inspected, and the inspector told them they were the first of 6 pharmacies they had been to that had a free sharps container and even knew about the program. And he
and I
said,
guess
I mean, if looks could kill, I'm telling you, they can't stand me because I'll tell them the truth and they don't want to hear it because it's going to cost them money. But they want to change the program because they're saying they argued, and this is the interesting thing about how these bills evolve. So I argued with them. I said, you should have drop off locations. Like that's how it works in other countries for the needles and the meds. And the needle people said, we don't want to work with Med Project. We want to have our own program. We want to do a mail back. I said, I've never seen a mail back. I've never seen it work. So I'm going to put 2 conditions on that. One is that if people leave the pharmacy with a needle, they must be given a container so they don't go home and put it in a pop bottle or something else that ends up sticking our workers. The second requirement is if your idea of mail back does not work and they end up at a public facility, you're paying for every one of them. And they said, nope, we're not going to agree to the second thing. They walked away from the table for 3 days and I thought the bill was dead. And then they came back and agreed to it. Guess what they're complaining about now? The cost of reimbursing local governments who are having to take the needles because people are not hearing about the program and still having to buy containers from the pharmacies that are supposed to knowingly be giving away free containers. I mean, I could go on and on. So I said, if you want to open this back up, beware, because I'm going to be there and I'm going to remind you all about this was your brilliant idea and you can't make it work. And I will go back to what I want, which is you pay for all the illegal drug use needles because somebody bought them. You all profited from it. Why aren't the people who are picking those up on the streets able to get a free container and have that paid for? They should,
so.
but right now they're not.
It's like the catch-22 for all household hazardous waste that local jurisdictions don't want to advertise that, no, don't throw it in the trash, but we don't have the bandwidth to handle that if you take it to us. And we don't have the bandwidth to even educate you in the first place. So EPR is kind of the solution to get industry to clean up their mess, basically. So
it is, but just make sure that the agencies have to do there's like a 3-legged stool. And the agencies oversight agencies are one of the 3 legs. It has to be quick enforcement that matters. And that's why we've been also raising the fines amounts in these bills to up to 50,000 a day. Some of these companies, I don't want them doing what they've done with the bottle bill and just paying fines and moving along, and the public doesn't have enough collection locations. We also have to put in the laws, I believe, that the companies have to pay a reasonable amount to the pharmacies or whomever is doing the collecting on their behalf to help, because it's a business. Why should they be mandated? Like, why should a grocer be mandated to take back bottles and cans? They sell 70,000 SKUs. That looks terrifying to them. Like, what are they going to make us take back next at no cost? How are we going to do this with a constant turnover of employees? So we all have to think practically about how these work and make sure the policy is set up correctly, the agency has the tools it needs to do its job, and then hopefully we have buy-in from willing producers who were at the table so they weren't on the menu, that they're part of this discussion getting to the place where we have the bill. There are some industries that just refuse to do a good job, and I would put carpet at the top. And then we've got a few others who've been problematic, but I don't think it's as egregious as carpet, but the carpet industry has probably been the worst.
We could get into the weeds of that whole, let's compare and contrast carpet just with any other program. Real quick, just to talk about paint care, or the paint program, just to see, I guess when they really took effect, this is the CalRecycle website. They took effect in 2013, I guess, and collection since 2013 through 2019 really picked up. And this kind of mauve band was basically paint care. That's all the paint care made the difference to really increase all household hazardous waste, but that was a big chunk. So there's obviously a need, and EPR programs can make a difference in collection and disposition of where this stuff goes. But now it's kind of, I guess the pandemic kind of affected things, almost like grocery bags. People are going back to same old thing. I don't know what's going on, but education an issue? Anyway.
We've had a question about how you can help. So I would say individually, I'm not speaking to you as employees there, obviously, but if you like what we do and you believe in the way we approach things, it's really, really hard to fundraise for groups like mine. Because you don't want to be beholden to anybody. You want to be able to do the right thing. And unfortunately, a lot of money comes with strings. And if we're doing projects and grants, it's usually, a lot of admin, a lot of overhead, a lot of paperwork. So if you want to join us, you can. You can go to our website and go to donate. But the other thing you can do is when you do that, we send out alerts. Like, there's bills in California. We're based in California. So I help bills in other states like Texas, a bottle bill right now. I'm working in other states. But right here, we've got two really important bills. And then there's other people that have sponsored bills that we support. So you will see, like, here's a sign-on letter. If you want to come testify on your lunch as a citizen, you can. You're allowed to do that, or meet with your own legislator, or send them a letter and say, I work in this space by day. I'm not representing anybody except myself, but you are a citizen first, and you are allowed to do that. You just can't comment on behalf of your agency. It has to be, you just have to say that very clearly. But those are things you can do. And also volunteering. Like my biggest thing is I want bodies in hearing rooms. I want the public's voice to be heard. All we see in these hearings is paid lobbyists that make $400, $500, $600 an hour. We don't see the average person anymore. And that's why we're not getting heard. So if you want to show up in hearings and testify on behalf of yourself in support of something, that helps a lot.
And maybe you should clarify, the California Product Stewardship Council is separate from the National Stewardship Action Council, but you started both?
I did. In fact, let me real quickly, let me see, I'll show my screen for just a second so you can see what we look like. So this is a presentation we just gave, but we've got now, I started the California Product Stewardship Council first back in 2007. And we were so successful at passing bills and bringing together people to solve the problems in California. We formed the National Stewardship Action Council, which is the C4, meaning I can do unlimited lobbying. And then we also have the C3, which is the education and outreach arm nationally. But I prefer people join the C4 because that's the hardest one to fund. That's where we can do the advocacy. I do support most of what the California Product Stewardship Council does. I can tell you that I had a bit of a disagreement with them last year on the solar panel bill, and I'll explain why. They were supporting and sponsoring a bill that was not EPR. It was actually going to drive solar panels into the existing state-run e-waste program. The reason I didn't support that is because the e-waste program is broken. It's a state-run program. It's very, I mean, there's just not enough collection locations, and it needs a lot of help. And CalRecycle even did its own report saying this in 2018. It should probably flip to EPR, and that's what the report said. So do I want to add more products, especially one that has to be taken off a roof by contractors 99% of the time, and adding more to a program that needs to be fixed? No, I do not. And does that, if it's a visible fee, is that driving the industry to care about those end of life costs? No, it does not. So unless we get, this year, it looks like they've introduced a bill that is EPR, and it's going to be very hotly fought by the so-called green solar industry. And I'm in energy. So, I can tell you what I've learned too is industries you think are green, like cannabis or solar panels, they're just like every other business. When it comes down to it, they're going to externalize those costs when they can, because their fiduciary responsibility, if they're a C Corp, is to make money. And usually that's
all
at the
the
expense of people and planet.
all the disposable vape pens I pick up in the park are all cannabis.
Can you please take pictures of those and tell me the day and where, because they're in our household hazardous waste bill.
Yes.
And they're saying they're not a problem, that cannabis has their own take back and all that. And some of the companies do, and we support them. But that helps me having real, and again, having people come in and say,
some of them are
just
so
not
old,
true.
I can only tell that they're disposable vape, and I can't tell what's in them because I find them in a field after the sheep have grazed through and made them visible.
Exactly.
I
Yep.
pick up a lot of trash.
Me too. Every walk I pick it up. And I would just say again, let's turn off the spigot. Let's not keep mopping. This is crazy. Now, I do want to say this too. What is a circular economy? It is three things. It's not recycling. Recycling is recycling. It's design, waste, and pollution out of the system first. Keep products and materials in use, whether it's organics in the organic stream, products in the product stream, and then go back and fix the natural systems we've harmed, which is everything at this point, including our own bodies. But the only bill that's ever done that was SB 54, which we'll talk about at another time. No other bill addressed all of those things. But these are some of the bills and the policy tools that we've used: bans, right to repair, deposits to increase collections, sales bans like we did on fluorescent lighting. But this goes back to 2007 when I got in the CalRecycle, then Waste Board strategic plan, that they will seek statutory authority to foster cradle-to-cradle producer responsibility and develop relationships with stakeholders that result in producer-financed and producer-managed systems.
Nothing is more frustrating than a perfectly good vacuum cleaner that completely works except for where the handle connects to the hose. That's the only piece is broken, and you can't get that piece. So frustrating, because I only do canister vacs.
I will tell you something else you can all do. And I won't get into all of this, but we've done a lot of bills, and this has been a long, let me see if I can show you this. This is, okay. So this is a picture. See this video? So this poor person is in the UK. He's just sorting recyclables, totally innocent. He's pulling them off a sort line. And then, what is this? I don't know. Well, guess what? It's an explosive marine flare.
Yay.
That's what our people are exposed to. Look at how close this is to his face. He could have easily lost an eye or died. And that's the kind of stuff I'm trying to explain to people how dangerous this is. Our workers deserve a lot better. And this has become a big, big problem. And we've had to pivot. Like last year, we expanded the paint care program we were talking about to be, it was supposed to be a hazardous waste EPR bill, but paint care came to us and said, we don't want to be split between two programs. We said, fine, use your existing visible fee program. We'll just let you expand all your paint products, arts and crafts paint, marine paint, furniture paint. So we did that. And fabulous, right? Now more things, but we need to get more public education. But where we are now is LA County is going to start regulating HHW by itself because they are absolutely, they're spending $14 million a year and getting about 5% of it. And a lot of it ended up in the air after the fires. So we've got national working groups and all that stuff, but I'll stop sharing. But, you know, it's important that all of you know that there's a way to turn off the spigot. We don't have to all spend our entire lives mopping and making micro changes. We need to make big changes and fast to protect the people in the system that are on the front lines, getting stuck with needles, having marine flares go off in their face, having truck blow up at them because somebody put in an oxygen tank. We got to do better, and we got to do better fast. So we need your help and look forward to working with you.
So you talked about solar panels and vaping, kind of the front line of what you're working on now, I guess, and household hazardous waste in general.
Yep.
And what else is kind of on the horizon? Have you, at some point, are you just going to be done with everything is covered?
My goal is that nothing hits the market without an end of life plan. The only way we can do that is if we have rules around screening products before they come to market. I do not believe that marine flares that are explosive should ever have been sold without having any end of life plan. They're now being disposed of in the trash, in the ocean. They used to have perchlorate until 2 years ago. We endanger ourselves and everyone by not doing this in screening. So and then, you know, it has to be an end of life plan that works and that has a collection system that's convenient for the public. The presentation, that's one of the many presentations we give, Jeanette. And if you join us, that's the thing. You'll get the free, if you email me, I'll put you on the listserv and then you can access all the stuff free because state workers often can't do it. I mean, individually, if you can contribute, that's fantastic. But I know the agencies often can't contribute, especially to a lobbying organization. So we can have you, or you can join our C3 organization that is tax deductible, and we often allow both them to join our webinars free. So I'm doing one next week, actually next Wednesday on household hazardous waste and batteries. That's national with the National Association of Hazardous Materials Managers. And another co-host is the Solid Waste Association of North America that I told you just had put the national statement out about the need to work with producers of products with batteries in them. I think we're coming to a head on this hazardous waste stuff. I started it 2010. We had our first bill on EPR for household hazardous waste and nobody was ready for it. We did organics first, then packaging, and that was wrong order because packaging is plastics and we needed those out before we did organics. So we did that backwards. And both of them are contaminated with hazardous waste because we never did that first. And we've got our insurance costs going through the roof. So that's what I talked about at the hearing this week or last week was, we're doing this in all the wrong order and we should look at as a state, how do we do a better job of bringing stakeholders together and thinking through as a state, what are really the highest priority things we need to do? And let's do those first. Let's not just say, oh, every little nonprofit that has an idea throws in a bill. The state never leads on this. So they just wait for hoping people put in the right bill. And then everybody comments on it, but it may not be the right thing at the right time. And that's been happening a lot. So I've asked that they think bigger picture, because agencies can't handle everything at once either. You have to have them coming at a pace that you can handle it.
So again, we wanted to save the packaging EPR till next time, but you got what, that $5 billion over a 10-year period from
Yep.
the industry to help pay for the impacts of plastic.
And surprise, they want to delay.
Yeah, but that's a huge deal. I mean, so is it almost like your whole career has led to being able to get to that point, to be able to have a $50,000 a day penalty if they're not complying? Just the packaging EPR bill was a huge deal compared to all the other paint and mattress and carpet and all the other programs. But so HHW is learning from those lessons. I want to get into how
You
did you get
definitely
to that
all have
point?
to
That'll
watch
be next
the
time.
hearing, because this was
Yeah.
all addressed in my little 7 minutes at the hearing. But and then the Q&A addressed it too. But I really do feel like we in California are at a very pivotal moment. If we blow it, the other states and the rest of the nation are going to have a much harder time. If we do this right on packaging and we get this done, then everything is going to flow. But the industries right now are using packaging as the reason to stop HHW. So, and I've always said that's the most important, is get the toxics out first.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever been to a MRF, but a material recovery facility here in South Sacramento, Cal Waste, they have a letter that says, in support of the HHW bill, they pulled 183,000 pounds of household hazardous waste out of blue bin sort lines. They're supposed to be just recyclables. Don't tell me we are not contaminating packaging. We did not do what we should have done first. But again, our system is not set up correctly to make sure we're doing the right thing at the right time. And that's what I'm trying to get to now. But yes, I'm not going to retire until we get these big things finished.
Are there any other big things after HHW?
No, that is the biggest for California. We've already done the textiles. I mean, to me, I think, there's some little things on the side. The explosives like fireworks and ammunition should absolutely be covered, but we can't do that all in one bill, take on all those fights. But I would say those are kind of the more niche things that are going to end up needing to be addressed. But I want to get not just EPR, I want to get to the place where every agency can review what's coming to market and say, we can't handle this. The system cannot manage it. And if you don't have an end-of-life plan, you can't sell it here. There should be no reason why we started selling Mylar balloons that sing and have flying electronics that literally litter our wildlands and destroy our electrical systems.
Yeah.
How stupid. Why are we allowing this? But we do. So that's the kind of stuff.
Well, Heidi, the time flew for me. I don't know about everybody else, but I really appreciated a really interesting conversation, and looking forward to our next conversation about the packaging EPR program and hopefully soon. So thank you so much for coming and joining and sharing your information with us. I hope everybody is more aware of all the programs and all the places that, to be able to search for places to take your carpet and paint and mattresses and all those things, and hopefully soon batteries and textiles and HHW on the horizon. So anyway, thank you again.
Stay in touch with me. Follow me on LinkedIn, follow us, National Stewardship Action Council, join us, email me. But if you have any questions on this stuff, Burke knows most of it too, but I'd love, staying connected to people and making sure they can maximize use of the existing programs, and we can make them all better in the long run for Californians. And thank you for all you do to protect our state. We so appreciate you all.
Well, thank you. All right. Take care, everybody.
Thanks so much, Burke.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.